I so want people to see how beautiful God is. So when a friend of mine started talking about how evil the Old Testament God is, I asked him a little bit irritated if he had really read the Bible. Well, sometimes you should not be so proud of your own knowledge and ask yourself how much you could take of your own advice. So I dove into the hard passages, the ones that everyone is really angry and upset about. I created a whole series about it, but there was something that got me stuck. It was the passage of Uzzah. If you never heard about it before, well, I had heard about it when I grew up in a very religious family where we read the Bible every day. I just didn't reflect on it. I was a kid, you know. I understood it was important, but not really why. And then I went out to play with my friends and forgot about it all. They say that the religion you are born into is not yours until you choose it. Well, since January, I've been choosing to work with the hard questions of the Bible to challenge my faith. And God has always made sense to me. Until now, until Uzzah. A man reaches out to steady the Ark of the Covenant. He touches it, he dies. He had grown up around the Ark. He was trying to help. And the man who loved God more than anyone, David, becomes afraid. Not just reverent, afraid, not fear as in respect, scared of God, shaken to the bones. In fact, the text says David was angry at God for what happened. Then that anger turned into fear. He stops everything. He leaves the ark behind. For 3 months, he does not know what to do. This is where I start thinking to myself, David, the one who went against Goliath, announcing he would decimate that giant in God's name like no one else. Scared? Angry? I had to study this on a deeper level. My very first important question, and probably many with me, was, if God is love, why does a reflex, a single instinct to protect a symbol of God's presence, end a life? There has to be an explanation, an answer in the Bible. But there was not. It felt like trying to kiss a cactus or approach a wounded tiger, like looking at a growling dog showing its teeth with happy wagging tail. Nothing made sense. How can you have a real loving relationship if you're scared? If I am clumsy, and I am, I could never be in God's service. I would have died the first day. Uzzah was handpicked to walk that close to the ark. A small tiny mistake and zap, done. I started getting pretty upset, then angrier and angrier. Perhaps it came from disappointment. I was angry with God, and I understood David. The questions I had were almost a crisis of faith. If I cannot understand this, then how can I explain it to others? Maybe I had been wrong the whole time about God, and my friend was right. This could not be. I decided to walk through that day with David. First, there's joy. David is reestablishing national worship. He's bringing the ark home. He's excited. He's celebrating. Everything feels right. But here's the thing. That was not the first time the ark had been out. Generations had handled it since Moses. How come they suddenly decided to do it differently? The ark wasn't new. It had existed since Moses. But let me bring you back to the history of the ark. The Philistines captured the ark in battle. Big mistake. Plagues broke out in their cities, tumors, chaos, their own God falling flat on his face. After 7 months of panic, they put the ark on a new cart. They handled the ark, touched it. They had no special rules, no Levites, no poles, just a cart and some cows. They hitched it to an oxen and let it go back toward Israel. And it worked. For them. The ark ended up in Kiryat Yearim, a quiet town in Israel. And there it stayed. During Samuel's leadership, the ark was present but not central. Then Saul became king. Saul had other priorities. There's a telling moment in 1 Samuel 14. Saul mentions the ark and immediately moves on. That is Saul in one line. He uses God when needed, but does not center his rule on him. The ark was nearby, but irrelevant to his leadership. By the time David decides to bring it back, roughly 70 to 100 years has passed. David's instinct was different. Not use God, but organize life around God's presence. This was one of his first major acts, to retrieve the ark. But here's the problem. Nobody had handled the ark properly in generations. The only recent example of moving the ark was the Philistines' cart and oxen method, and it had worked for them, so David copied it. The chosen people, who were the only nation with written instructions from their God, looked at foreigners for guidance. It would be as if Ferrari would look at Peugeot for tips. It was an amateur move from the new king. 100 years without a recent example made them forget that they could just have pulled out the installation manual, which was in Numbers 4, and says the ark was to be carried on poles, on the shoulders of the Kohathites, a specific branch of the tribe of Levi, who were allowed to carry but not to touch or even look directly before covering. They carried the ark by poles, not by hand, not by cart. The ark had poles permanently inserted. It could be moved by lifting the poles, not the ark itself. But after a century of neglect, that knowledge had faded. In 2 Samuel 6 and 3, it says, they set the ark on a new cart when bringing it from Abinadab's house. So it was not already sitting on one at that moment. And they moved it, probably by the poles. So up till now, everything is fine. Then shock. The oxen stumble. Uzzah reaches out on reflex and touches the ark directly to steady it. He dies. Because of what happened to Uzzah, David is angry with God. The text says so. He's confused. He doesn't understand. He was doing what God wanted him to do. Then fear creeps in. David says, "How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me?" He's afraid, not of the ark, but of what just happened, of God. He's questioning how something so powerful that kills a man just for touching it could ever be in his possession. Then distance. He leaves the ark at the house of Obed-Edom. For 3 months, nothing, no movement, no clarity. And then he starts investigating. Then, understanding. He learns what went wrong. The ark was not supposed to be on a cart. The structure was already compromised. Uzzah was not a priest. He was from the house where the ark had been stored, and familiar with it, but not assigned to handle it. And even priests were never allowed to touch the ark directly. The boundary had been set long before. In the first book of Chronicles 15:13, David says, "Because you did not carry it the first time, the Lord broke out against us, because we did not seek him according to the rule." But wait, that raises another question. Why could the Philistines touch the ark without dying? That feels unfair. Because the Philistines were not God's people. They had no covenant with him. When the ark was with them, it was not activated with his power in the same way. God did not live in the ark. His power and symbol of presence was with the ark when it was with his people. When it came back to Israel, it became fully activated again. That is why the Philistines did not die when they lifted the ark onto that cart. They were outsiders handling a foreign object under judgment, not covenant carriers mishandling what they should have known. Israel copied the Philistine method. They acted as if the ark were still deactivated, as if God's presence was not really with them. But the moment Uzzah touched it, the judgment proved God was back. The covenant was active. It hit me that if the whole thing was about Israel treating the ark like it was still an ordinary object, still off, so to speak, and still something they could handle however they liked, then Uzzah's death wasn't God losing his temper. It was the moment God said, "I'm actually here. Did you forget?" Imagine bringing out a war missile and not reading the instructions on how to handle it. The offense was not just technical disobedience, it was treating a holy presence as a common cargo. I stopped being mad for a moment, and one thought came into my head. God is never wrong. There are so many things in the Bible that you look at and marvel at the connections, so perfectly put together. Why not this one? Why would the only explanation be the procession was wrong? I started looking at patterns. What other moments in the Bible have this kind of sap you're dead moment? Let me show you what I've found besides Uzzah. We have Nadab and Abihu in Leviticus 10. It's the sons of Aaron who offer strange fire. Strange fire means fire that was not commanded by God, and the fire consumes them. The second is Ananias and Sapphira, who lied about their offering, and both dropped dead. Also surrounding something very new, Beth Shemesh in 1 Samuel 6, where people look into the ark and many die. We have Korah's rebellion, challenge Moses' authority, and earth swallows them. So what do they have in common? Well, one, foundational moments. They occur when a system is being established: priesthood, ark worship, early church, leadership, authority. Second is known boundaries. The rule was already given. The violation is not ignorance, but disregard. The third is that it's public, it's visible. The event serves as a signal to the whole community. And the fourth is proximity to the holy. The people involved are close to what represents God's presence. And another thing that combines them all is that they are rare exceptions. Most wrongdoing in the Bible is met with warning, delay, or gradual consequence, not instant death. We will look into each of these more deeply into the rest of my series that will start next week. For now, just notice the pattern. These are not random outbursts. They are boundary-setting moments at critical junctures. So what did David discover, and what did I discover? David understood something that they had all forgotten. The rules were not put in place without a real reason. Holiness in the Old Testament was like a fire that would consume anything unprepared. It also teaches you something else. The closer you are to God, the more responsibility, because you have the knowledge. Uzzah's action was the last moment in a chain of wrong setup, bad organization, not following instructions, and then a reflex came. The physical stumble revealed a prior spiritual stumble. And when David realized that, he did not stay afraid. He returned and brought the ark again, this time correctly. No wonder he danced before the Lord with all his might, leaping, shouting with joy that day. The Bible uses one word, fear, to describe two very different things. The first is terror. It is what you feel when you realize you're in danger and you have no control. It makes you want to run away. David felt this when Uzzah died. The second is awe. It is what you feel when you encounter something so much larger than yourself that your normal categories break. It does not make you run away. It makes you stop. It makes you listen. It makes you realize you're not in charge. David's fear started as terror, but it did not stay there. He learned something that day. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That is not terror, that is awe. The beginning, not the end. And I actually, for the first time in my life, understand why David is celebrating this day. I was no longer angry with God. Later that evening, when I opened my Bible, the first passage I fell upon was Daniel 4:35. All the people of the earth are regarded as nothing. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" That was humbling. A reminder that I am not the one who holds the full story. It is about perspective. A child cannot understand why a parent allows a painful surgery, but the parent sees the whole picture. The verse is not a threat. It simply means I'm not in a position to judge the judge, and that his rule stands. So here's what I finally settled in my heart. If a friend of mine were accused of something, I would not jump to conclusions. I would listen. I would look at the whole story. I would trust that there is more than what first appears. Why would I not give God the same courtesy? We're so quick to judge God based on a hard passage, one moment that we do not fully understand. But the Bible shows again and again that God is not capricious. He gives instructions for a reason. The sap moments are not him being cruel. They are wake-up calls at foundational moments when his people had forgotten who they were dealing with. The God I thought I knew, the one who seemed harsh and dangerous, turns out to be the one who was trying to wake me up from my own casualness. The real questions, the uncomfortable ones, the ones that makes you angry, those are not a threat to faith. They are how faith grows. If truth is real, it doesn't need protection from honest questions. If the Bible makes you angry, good. Use it to evolve. This is the intro to my new series.